What's going on, guys? Zuco back with another Dragonflight video. Hope you're all doing very well. We're going to continue on this series where Zuco fixes everything about World of Warcraft. And mostly, of course, we're talking about the specs that aren't really included in the meta right now. One of those unfortunate things with the game right now where if you look at something like Raider.io and you look at Mythic Plus, which we'll look at right here, you can see that it's kind of dominated right now by 5 specs. We talked about it in the other video, but of course it's going to be Guardian, Druid, Holy Paladin, Augvoker, Shadow Priest, and Fire Mage. They're all over the place. So we talked about Hunter, how to bring Hunter into the meta, because Blizzard's response has been to just nerf these 5 specs, when in reality I think we should try and buff the other specs. You can see there's just so many of them. I think we should try and buff the other specs to try and bring them into the fold. And we're going to talk about Demon Hunter today, which is definitely making its way. It makes a couple splashes here into the top 100 as far as tanks go. But there's a lot of reasons to not bring a Demon Hunter, and I want to talk about why we should bring Demon Hunters into Mythic Plus in particular. If we're talking about Raid, of course Demon Hunters have Chaos Brand, which is a little bit like cheating, but it's the main reason they're brought to Raid. You're damaging, you damage enemies, increasing their magic damage taken by 5%. So that's really, really good in a Raid scenario, of course. But in Mythic Plus, it's not as important to have that. And so let's talk about some examples of what we could bring in to possibly change the talent tree and make it better. I'm going to bring my thing up here again and try and make sure I get it positioned correctly this time. There we go. That should be a little bit better than it was last time. So we're focusing primarily on the class tree. What can we change in the class tree to help Demon Hunter be brought into the fold? Mostly, we're not thinking about damage or healing. We're thinking primarily about group utility. How do we bring that group utility? Because that's what all the classes in the God comp right now, they've got battle reses. They have things like Mark of the Wild, Arcane Intellect. Those are group-wide buffs. They have things like PI, Mass Dispel, a whole bunch of really interesting utility. That's why they're brought, right? Augvokers have a bunch of shields for the tank, of course. Really, really good stuff like that. Their damage is, of course, really good, but it's the utility we're focusing on. So what are we going to kind of remove, or what are we going to add to the Demon Hunter tree to make them more desirable? Well, I think, first of all, there's a lot of talents in there that are kind of useless. This one, Lost in Darkness, this is the one where your Spectral Sight lasts longer. It's just really silly to put this in the talent tree. Bit of an insult, really. This one here, Fell Rush, increases your movement speed by 10%. We are going to buff this one. That'll be the first one we talk about. And then all the sigil stuff is kind of underwhelming and isn't really picked a lot. So we want to try and look at some of the sigils and talk about how are we going to make them more desirable talent choices so that people actually want to take them and put them into their builds, because that's really the most what we're talking about here. So first and foremost, Fellfire Haste. Let's look at my buffed version of it. Fellfire Haste increases your movement speed by 10%, of course, and now leaves behind a trail for 8 seconds. Allies gain 15% movement speed for 4 seconds when they're on this trail. That would be really interesting. So to me, this is maybe the one raid buff that I was thinking of bringing. There's actually another one that might also be a raid buff too, but this one in particular, this buffs your entire party, and in particular the melee bros. Once again, I want to emphasize, I don't know if I talked about this earlier, but most of the changes that I'm talking about in here are going to affect allies that are close to the Demon Hunter. And I want to emphasize that because, again, I think Demon Hunter, it would be really cool if their buffs were primarily focused around melee people or people that are nearby them, not just buffing the entire group in general. They already buff everybody with their Chaos Brand. So this is the first step in that direction. Allies gain 15% movement speed when they're moving through the trail. Obviously, ranged people can come and get inside the trail and move around and get the movement speed bonus as well. But primarily, you're going to be like vengeful retreating and then fell rushing forward, and that's going to affect the melee people that are right nearby. So this is, I think, the first really cool buff you could bring to your raid to potentially help people move around the raid encounter a little bit more. Let's move on to the second one here. All right, next we've got Sigilmancer down at the bottom. We're moving into all of the, essentially, the sigil-oriented buffs that I'm going to add in here. So, number one, we've got Sigilmancer. It's going to replace Demon Muzzle. So, Demon Muzzle says, enemies deal 8% reduced damage, magic damage to you for 8 seconds after being affected by one of your sigils. Very, very cool. Here's what it's going to do now. All your sigils cool down 20% faster, so we're incorporating actually quickened sigils into this. Activating a sigil reduces your magic damage taken and 4 nearby allies' magic damage taken by 10% for 4 seconds. Once again, notice the 4 nearby allies. So this is, if you're in a raid, this is going to hit the melee bros once again. And I think that's okay. I want that to be the emphasis of a lot of these talents here. So your sigils will cool down quicker, which is great. And then when you activate a sigil, you reduce magic damage taken for 5 people, including you, by 10%. So this is something as a Vengeance DH in particular, you could, you know, have Sigil of Misery, have a couple charges of Sigil of Flame. There's one here, right? I don't know if there's more charges or not. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you can have these sigils, and you can be trying to space them out so that they are, in fact, going down over and over again, and that you can overlap this buff so that you're reducing magic damage taken by your team over and over and over again. I think this is a really cool idea. So it's definitely good for Vengeance DH, and it might incentivize your Havoc Demon Hunter to try and get those Sigil of Flames down as much as he can so that he can reduce magic damage taken on your entire team. There's so much magic damage in all kinds of Mythic Plus dungeons and also in raids. So I think this is a really neat idea. And again, might incentivize you, might make you think twice about not bringing a Demon Hunter. Because if you bring a Demon Hunter, they're going to be putting sigils down, and they're going to be reducing magic damage taken for at least 5 people by 10%. And you could just do it over and over and over again. So I think that's a really cool idea, a really interesting kind of niche. Here's a PvP talent I want to bring in. I think this is another great raid buff, also good in Mythic Plus. Reverse Magic. Removes all harmful magic effects from yourself and all nearby allies within 10 yards, and sends them back to their original caster if possible. A 2-minute cooldown might be a little bit generous. Maybe go for a 3-minute cooldown here. I just wrote 2 because, I don't know, I wanted it to be OP. But removing all harmful magic effects is insane, right? Think about the current Mythic Plus dungeons that we're doing. Think of like Uldamon, right? The final boss of Uldamon, he puts that slowing... He puts 3 people with that slowing kind of sand thing that does ticking damage over time. It does so much damage to you. You could just immediately remove all of it. It's like having a Mass Dispel, except on a melee Demon Hunter instead of a Priest. And I think this is a cool idea. Again, I don't want the cooldown to be as good as Mass Dispel. We don't want to take it away from Priest. But I think of all the melee specs to have this, it's got to be a Demon Hunter. They're focused very much on like magic, right? Consume magic. They're all about anti-magic. That's what they're supposed to be doing, right? So I think reverse magic makes sense. Bring it out of the PvP tree, put it into the PvE tree, and replace this stupid Lost in Darkness one that makes your Spectral Sight last longer. I think that would be a really enticing talent for people to want to go and take it, but make you think twice about just autopiloting into a build that goes to the left side of the tree. Again, we're trying to get people to come to the right side of the tree where all the sigil stuff is going to be, okay? Let's keep going. Moving down a little bit, we're getting down to the final 2 sigil areas here, okay? Sigil talent. So extended sigils is one increases the duration of sigil effects by 1 second. That's a 2-point talent. I would turn it into a 1-point talent, and I would change it to be called Save Your Soul. Here's what it does. Every 3rd sigil you cast spawns a soul fragment. Soul fragments are, of course, what can heal you as either a Havoc DH or a Vengeance DH. If you consume that soul fragment, you will heal yourself. You and up to 4 nearby party or raid members are healed for 1% of your maximum HP per soul fragment you consume. This is really good for Vengeance DH, who's consuming soul fragments like 1 to 2 a second, right? Basically, especially in Mythic Plus. You're just consuming, you're generating and consuming soul fragments all the time. So you're going to now heal party and raid members nearby. I didn't put nearby, but that's what it would be. 4 of them for 1% of their max HP per soul fragment you consume, right? So if you consume 1 soul fragment, it's 1% of your max HP. If you consume 5 soul fragments, everybody gets 5% of their max HP. So this might be a little bit overpowered. You might have to go bring it down to like 0.5% of your max HP, or reduce the amount of people that are healed. Maybe it only heals 3 party and raid members, or 2 extra party and raid members besides yourself. So 3 people in total. There's ways to tweak this to make it so that it's not completely overpowered. But I think on Vengeance DH, this would be a really good reason to come down and grab Save Your Soul. Because the amount of group healing you could produce would be insane. I think it'd be really, really strong. So that's a really cool idea. Again, that's going to go right here. It's going to replace extended sigils. Let's look at the final one here. This was quickened sigils. It's now going to become Sigil Master. The duration of all sigil effects are increased by 1 second. So that was the old extended sigils. So we're getting that baked in. All sigils echo a second time 2 seconds later at 30% effectiveness. Every sigil that you throw down will go down again. And it only have 30% effectiveness, whatever it does. Sigil of Misery, if it goes down again, it'll only silence those people or make them cower in fear for 30% of the effectiveness of the original ability. So something like 5 seconds instead of 20 seconds, right? Your Sigil of Flame will only do it'll do much less damage. Only 30% of the damage in less time. It'll only generate 30% of the fury. So instead of 30 fury, I think it generates like 10 fury. Still generates something, but it's going to be not as effective. Now again, the way to tweak Sigil Master is to say maybe 30% is too strong, go down to 25%, go down to 20%, whatever the number has to be. These sigils will go off a second time, and they will trigger all of their effects a second time, including if you combo it with Save Your Soul, it will spawn a soul fragment, and it will heal. So again, there's some synergy there with the two talents that I've just added. Also, if you want to come down and take Elysian Decree, this would also trigger a second time. And if you played Shadowlands and played with Elysian Decree, you remember there was a soulbind, a conduit, that ended up giving you the echoing effect. I think it was called Echoing Decree. It echoed the Elysian Decree sigil. So this Sigil Master would do a similar thing. You wouldn't be able to take Fodder to the Flame, but that's okay. You would be taking Elysian Decree, and you would be getting those things to trigger more. So again, we're trying to incentivize people to take the sigils, and along with this big talent at the bottom called Sigil Master, making your sigils echo, you now have additional utility built in. Every third sigil is going to spawn a soul fragment that will heal you, and it will also heal your party, which is super cool. If you're taking Sigil Master, you're also getting the 20% cooldown reduction on your sigils, including something like Elysian Decree, and then activating that sigil will also reduce magic damage taken on your party. So now you're healing your party, and you're reducing magic damage taken, and if you're fell rushing around, you're increasing their movement speed as well, and then you have a big cooldown in reverse magic to get rid of all magic effects on enemies and send them back to the enemies that sent them. A very Demon Hunter thing to do. So this is my talent tree mock-up for Demon Hunter. These are the big buffs that I think that would give them some really cool utility, a lot of extra healing, a lot of extra magic damage being reduced. All that stuff's really cool. Let's move on to the passives that I would also add in for Demon Hunter. So first of all, there's two main things that I would change. Havoc, Demon Soul. So actually, not just a Demon Soul for Havoc. This is actually for Vengeance. Does Vengeance get this buff? Maybe they don't. Actually, they do, right? Yeah, it's from Fodder to the Flame. So this basically only happens from Fodder to the Flame now. When you kill a demon, you have the Demon Soul's passive, of course. Is it here? Where is it? Is it only for Havoc? Shattered Souls. Here we go. Killing an enemy sometimes creates a soul fragment. If a soul fragment comes from a demon, it will give you 20% increased damage for 15 seconds. Here's what I'm doing with this. I'm saying, hey, it's not just Havoc. I shouldn't have wrote Havoc there. Sorry. Consuming a demon soul, whether you're Havoc or Vengeance, will grant 10% increased damage to the 4 closest party and Raven members for 12 seconds, okay? Maybe make it 10 seconds again. Tweak it however you want. You're going to get the Shattered Souls bonus. You're going to get that 20% increased damage. So the only way to do this predictably now is from Fodder to the Flame, that ability, so you wouldn't be able to take Elysian Decree. I'm trying to make it so you have a bit of a choice here. Either you take Fodder to the Flame and get this extra bonus damage for your team, for your party members, or you take the Elysian Decree route, you go with all the sigil stuff, and you reduce the damage taken by your party, and you heal your party. You can kind of go one route or the other, in my opinion. You can do some of the sigil stuff on the class tree if you want to, and then take Fodder to the Flame and get this damage bonus as well, or you can take Elysian Decree and go all in on the sigil stuff and go a bit more of a defensive route to support your party. It's really up to you. So I think that I want there to be a choice there of like, hey, I want to give my entire team this damage bonus because when you spawn the Fodder to the Flame demon and kill it, you get the demon soul, and then you would give half of the effectiveness of that demon soul to your party. I think that's a really cool idea. But again, there's a choice there between that and Elysian Decree. I want there to be a choice there. The second passive that we're going to buff is Leech. Your party, so the Leech bonus right now is called Soul Rending. You would have to take this talent to get this extra Leech buff that I'm talking about right here. So it's just added on to the bottom of Soul Rending. Your party and raid members within 15 yards, again, melee bros, gain 3% Leech. This effect is doubled during meta. Notice I said party and raid members within 15 yards. So if the entire raid is within 15 yards, then you're gonna buff them all. But if they're not all within 15 yards, then you're only gonna buff whoever's within that range. And then the effect is doubled during meta. So again, incentive for the Demon Hunter to be playing the class correctly, getting into meta as much as possible. This means that your personal Leech is going to go from 10% to 13%, and then from 20% in meta to 26% in meta. That's what you would get. And then you'd be giving 6% Leech to whoever's within 15 yards during meta. Those are the two kind of passives that I would add. I think this would really incentivize people to take at least one Demon Hunter, maybe two Demon Hunters into the raid, have a Vengeance Demon Hunter doing all this sigil stuff, reducing damage taken from allies, and also potentially healing them as well, getting lots of sigil effectiveness, or you have Fodder to the Flame buffing, or maybe you could have a Havoc DH, take Fodder to the Flame, and they're going to buff everybody with this new Demon Soul consumption. That's the idea kind of there. Last but not least, there's one particular Havoc buff that I would change here. This talent over here is really, really awful. This one here, Mortal Dance. It's good for like PvP. It's good for very, very niche PvE fights. Like the assault fight in Ray where you want to reduce the healing effectiveness on the boss. Let's buff it. Here's how we would buff it. Blade Dance reduces the target's healing received by 50%. Yeah, we got that. You and 4 nearby allies gain 100% dodge for 2 seconds after Blade Dance ends. This was like an old Blade Dance passive on Havoc where you would Blade Dance and you would get 100% dodge. I'm saying now you're going to give it to your entire freaking party, including your tank. In Mythic Plus, this could be really, really crazy for tank mitigation. Giving them 100% dodge for 2 seconds. It's a very short amount of time. I don't want it to be completely overpowered. But you can Blade Dance, I believe, twice inside of a meta proc from like your I-Beam. I was talking to Sup, my resident DH friend. He gave me a lot of inspiration for all the things that I added in this video. So props to Sup. And this was one that he added for Havoc. And I think that if you make it last for 2 seconds, it might not be too overpowered. But again, think about that. Giving your tank 100% dodge for 2 seconds. Imagine this with a Brewmaster. Pairing this up with a Guardian Druid or a Brewmaster would be absolutely insane, especially a Brewmaster, which relies on dodging to sort of make the whole kit work. So that's the last sort of buff that I want to talk about there. That's all my stuff for Havoc. We got 2 new passives that we, in addition to the Demon Souls, extra Leech. And then on top of that, we're going to be adding, of course, all of these talents in here. Buffing your team's movement speed if they're standing nearby. Buffing your sigils, making them reduce allies' magic damage taken. Having your sigils heal allies, depending on how many sigils you're consuming. Having a big cooldown and reverse magic make its way in. Some extra team utility. And then finally having your sigils echo an additional time. Getting extra damage, extra Sigil of Misery procs, extra healing because of this, extra reduced magic damage taken. I think it all kind of works together. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you think about this kind of package that I've worked up for Demon Hunter? Would this make Demon Hunters completely overpowered, or do you think it would just shift them closer to the meta, maybe into the meta as either Vengeance or Havoc to bring all these buffs, this extra utility to the team? Because remember, both Vengeance and Havoc DH, I think, do fine damage in Mythic Plus. It's the utility that they're lacking. Let me know what you think in those comments down below, guys. Thank you so much again for watching. Love you all. I will see you in the next one.